Okay. Good afternoon and welcome to Webinar Wednesday. We're excited to have over 160 registered attendees for today's webinar, which is eligible for 1 credit from the ACI. Let's get started by giving one lucky attendee a Webinar Wednesday surprise pack for answering this trivia question. What is the name of the Dr. Seuss character that steals Christmas? Answer now using the questions feature on your dashboard. While you're answering, I want to invite everyone to join us for our 5th Annual Imaging Conference and Expo, which will be held February 16th to 18th, 2018 at the M Resort Spa Casino in Las Vegas. The ICE conference will bring imaging service professionals from across the nation to Las Vegas for 2 days of learning, networking, and the latest advances in imaging. Registration is now open. Receive complimentary admission by using the code GOICE18, that's GOICE 18. Details can be found at attendice.com. Okay, and the winner of our Webinar Wednesday surprise pack is George Scarlatus. Well done, George. The correct answer is the Grinch. Webinar Wednesday would like to thank our sponsor, Summit Imaging. Summit Imaging is an ultrasound and mammography equipment support organization that can quickly address specific technical needs based on a foundation of outstanding rapid customer service. Our goal is simple, making our customers heroes. Visit mysummitimaging.com for more information. Our presenters today are Larry Nguyen, CEO and CTO of Summit Imaging, and Carl Grizel, Manager of Global Education and Training. Carl manages Summit's program that offers personalized, interactive courses on ultrasound systems to healthcare organizations across the country. Larry and Carl, you may begin whenever you're ready.
Well, thank you for the introduction. I'm Larry, CEO of Summit Imaging, and this is
Kyle. I'm the Manager of Training Education at Summit Imaging.
And today we just want to thank you for joining us. And today's topic is something that our healthcare facility customers have just really been working hard with us on, and really wanted to ask us to share what they're finding. And it's techniques to validate medical device suppliers' claims in the medical device industry. So a particular question that came up several times in our last webinar when we were talking about really low quality remanufactured parts making their ways into ultrasound equipment, specifically probes. The questions were coming up, well, how do I protect myself from that? And we want to dive a bit deeper into that topic. So we're going to double click into that today and spend some time on talking about some things you can do, some things to look for, some things to research. But in addition to that, this isn't the entire gamut of the things that you should be doing. This is just kind of just a few key points, because that's what we're allowed on time today. But this is such a huge topic that if you have any questions, just reach out to us and we're more than happy to help you.
Yeah, I think that was one of the pressing questions after talking about total cost of ownership and the life cycle, and how quality management systems can affect things. Well, how do you validate it?
Yes, exactly.
What are the questions you can ask? So we kind of have the unique position of being a vendor who gets asked that a bit. So we've presented this information before, and we've compared it to what some biomeds might know, and we can kind of fill in the gaps and start really getting the same thing going.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and dive into total cost of ownership and just review kind of what our customers have already helped us figure out what this formula is. The formula that our healthcare facility customers have come up with us as we work very closely with them to really holistically understand their needs. Of course, every healthcare facility is a little bit different, but these are the 4 main points that are total cost of ownership. And I think there's a hyper focus in the past couple of years of replacement part cost. If equipment goes down, how much does that part cost to get it back up?
And what's the invoice look like?
Absolutely.
That's kind of the end of it.
A bit short-sighted sometimes, and we're seeing a lot of transition into being a little bit more preemptive on some of the decisions and educating everybody involved to make sure that the healthcare facility is cared for holistically. So
Yeah.
the other three variables that are really becoming so much more valuable to lower total cost of ownership in its entirety
Yep.
is equipment downtime.
Mhm.
So depending on the type of equipment, that's opportunity cost
Mhm.
for a healthcare facility, not only in possibly revenue generation, but
Mhm.
more importantly, the patients that are in line
Yeah.
to be scanned and be cared for.
Yeah, typically just pushes everything back, or even the quality of care kind of gets dropped at that point as well.
Absolutely. Outsourced service costs. This is a really big one to where a lot of healthcare technology management um, departments
Yeah.
are trying to focus on going in-house
Mhm.
for a couple of reasons. Number one, you can literally remove outsourced service costs on
Yeah.
some pieces of equipment, and others is that nobody can get to the equipment faster than
Mhm.
the HTM that's right there in the building
Yeah.
to respond to diagnose right away.
Yeah, it's funny. Those two actually really reflect downtime is part of
Yep.
reducing the outsourced service costs, mostly because of the internal knowledge, and you're taking advantage of hands that were already there.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. And probably the biggest one here is liability risk. Risk mitigation is probably one of the top topics that we speak with our customers with.
Yep.
And the reason why we're doing so many of these webinars, and we
Mhm.
have a full YouTube channel full of these. So youtube.com/Summit Imaging,
Yeah.
we actually have an entire quality section
Yeah.
that is dedicated to healthcare facilities out there to learn about the risks that are out there so they can avoid them in
Exactly.
their entirety.
How to assess your own equipment, how to look into vendors, or maybe what kind of problems exist out in the market, what kind of things to look out for. Like, we've kind of dug into a lot of it and put it up there on that channel.
Absolutely, and there's a lot of content, and we usually have a new video coming out at least once a week,
Mm-hmm.
right about now, and moving into some other topics that our customers keep asking about, which is now kind of organizational development, because
Yep.
we've gone through a lot of the transitions that the hospitals are going through just with team development.
Yeah.
So yeah, the different topic altogether, but
Mhm.
check it out on YouTube, and it's there to educate and to help. The biggest things that we want to talk about today is researching regulations and standards
Yep.
about suppliers. And the reason why that's so important is because there's a lot of claims being made, and it's critical for healthcare facilities to validate the claims.
Mm-hmm. This is exactly the answer to the questions being asked. How do I research? How do I look into
Yep.
it? And it's actually surprisingly full of public resources.
Yeah.
You're not having to, learn a whole new language just to interpret this stuff.
Absolutely. So, we are fully aware that the FDA is going to propose some changes,
Mm-hmm.
and for us, we're looking forward to it because we're hoping that it's going to really improve patient care. At the end of the day, I mean that's why we're all here. But until then, we want to talk about what's been out there for a really long time. And these are the three things that are out there right now.
Yep.
It's on the FDA's website for the first two links here. So 510Ks and a searching of those, what those mean,
Mm-hmm.
the FDA website itself for medical devices, and then the ISO quality management system standards. So let's just kind of, we cascaded down. Let's work our way up. 1345 is becoming the standard, and our healthcare facility customers are coming to us. It's basically a requirement now that there is some sort of external validation of your quality management system.
Yeah.
And 1345 is special because it looks at the quality of the product and the quality of the product alone, and then searching for improvement of that.
Yes.
And we've been able to take that standard and apply it to our business, and it's been extraordinarily helpful, and allows us to take care of larger customers because they're looking for these kinds of things, and it's kind of a proof point that capacity is becoming an issue.
Yeah.
It seems like every day in the news there's more acquisitions of one large hospital network and more hospitals come into that. and then their needs increase.
Yes.
And so, this is a great,
Mhm.
at least indicator. It's not a,
It's a good indicator, and it's also very important because people have been, gauging 9001 a lot more in the recent years, especially because there's a new form that goes towards hospitals. So even hospitals are starting to adopt some sort of
Yeah.
ISO certification. But 1345 addresses the manufacturing of the medical equipment itself, not just a standard operating procedure, which 9001 tends to cover. Complaints and resolution, whereas this is actually manufacturing and process validation.
Yep.
And once it's validated, you know that. Now that you can say a product has gone through that process, that is ISO 1345.
Correct. And just to clarify for the audience that Summit's not manufacturing anything, we were just able to take the 1345 system and apply it to our repair business of ultrasound equipment. And very good system. It's the system to have, and we just don't think there's any replacement for that. So let's talk about the 510K and the general FDA website. The FDA website is overwhelmingly filled with information. And it does
very
take
dry too.
it's hard to read at times just because of the tone. But it's full of wonderful information that's been there for years. And we want to talk about specifically really low quality parts being, quote unquote, remanufactured and being introduced to medical equipment and not being disclosed to healthcare facilities in some form or fashion that, in particular, a device like an ultrasound probe, this is a different crystal altogether than what the part number says on the, the PO that might be cut from procurement to the supplier, no disclosure. And, if nothing's ever said, then it's, it is what it is. We don't agree with that at all.
Yeah. And, what we're talking about here is kind of just, medical devices in general have some very clear definitions and guidelines that need to follow.
Absolutely.
Right at the top of every document the FDA puts out. And then the form of being able to check on those repairs or those processes would be the 510K.
Right? And so the 510K, we're going to jump into that a little bit because I think there's a lot of confusion on what that really means. How do you look for it? When is it required? And we've done the homework for you to actually start guiding you through that process. So if you are questioning suppliers on their claims, this is a way to validate those kinds of claims. So what we've done here is the URL. This is just what the website looks like, and it's a 510K pre-market notification. And you can look up a 510K number, the device name, the applicant name, and you can kind of start seeing the process at work in the FDA's website. So if you don't find anything there, that means it's not there. And so that's going to be really important, is that this is kind of the place to go to validate these improperly remanufactured parts that we're finding in the equipment that we work on. It should be in here if the claim says it's okay. If it's not in here, we're going to kind of get into the details here of how the FDA is actually pretty black and white on what's required to do this, right, of suppliers. So today, we're just going to talk about ultrasound transducers. For us, it's a really high failure piece of equipment. We see a lot of transducers coming through, and we want to use it today because that's our expertise. That's what we do. We've already done all the homework. We did this a long time ago, and we just want to share, our findings and what our healthcare facility customers are finding so valuable. And now they actually want to take this process and go apply it in other areas.
Exactly. Let's talk about what you know first, right? So, but the important thing too is transducers are just a high traffic item. So they have one of the most risky life cycles in the hospital. And a lot of engineers are always talking to us like, how can we reduce the risk? What is involved? How can I, mitigate some damage? And taking these lessons from what we have and applying it, and then including the FDA structures, you can really give an engineer everything they need to know.
Yeah, and I think with our image quality training and the handling classes that you do, it was so eloquently put by one of our customers that said, ultrasound's hard because by virtue of being a fuzzy image, you don't know how much fuzzy is good fuzzy and how much fuzzy is not good fuzzy. So that's the challenges that ultrasound in particular has. But again, this isn't about transducers. We're just using it because that's our expertise. You can apply this logic and this process and this research to any medical device you may be needing to validate. So on this particular slide, we wanted to jump in and actually look at some of the details that you can find on the FDA website now. So you see there's a URL here. It's kind of small, but you'll get this video later and you can actually look up that, or just email one of us and we can send you the link.
Yeah, we'll include it in the notes on the video as well.
Oh yeah, it'll be in the comments below. Absolutely. Yeah. But this is a live web page as of today on the FDA site, where it says guidance for the industry and FDA staff, information for manufacturers seeking marketing clearance of diagnostic ultrasound systems and transducers, sections 4 through 6 and appendix A through H. So it says manufacturers, and let's kind of time out on that for a second. When you are manufacturing something like an OEM, this applies. But also when you're remanufacturing something, we actually start to see the FDA call these things out specifically in the language on the page below. And so this is what the FDA site looks like. There's a medical devices tab here, and right here we're on the ultrasound section, and it's long, but any ultrasound supplier should know exactly where this is at, because this is what's really regulating our market to keep the equipment safe and actually dictate the process on what needs to happen when you start to remanufacture components. And remanufacturing is kind of a gray term here, because sometimes remanufacturing is you have the OEM spec and you can remanufacture those exact specs. In ultrasound, there are no specs, so there really are no remanufacturers until they have a 510K.
Yeah, and there's very odd definitions based on what we would consider maybe something more of a repair is considered remanufacturing, and then there's refurbishment that's different, and then there's remarketing. So there's a whole echelon when really it should be kind of black and white sometimes.
Absolutely. And when you kind of get to that remanufacturing stage of the process, you are required to register with the FDA. So if you're getting remanufactured products inside your medical devices, that is a very fair question to ask. Are you registered with the FDA? You can look them up right here on the FDA's website to confirm and validate if they are or not. If they're not, that's a different conversation that you need to have. But again, we're here just to share what the website says and kind of take you through the daunting process here.
Yeah, where to start looking.
And so if you scroll down, I'm just going to take a moment to read this page. And this is non-OEM replacement transducers. So what we see in ultrasound in particular, we're seeing a lot of cable assemblies that are really low quality, and a lot of crystals, and you name it, on the internals of these probes, they're being, again, this double quote around remanufactured, but they're not the OEM parts that are repaired to restore the functionality and the safety of the equipment. These are literally parts being remanufactured, some in the US, a lot of it offshore, and then maybe because you can buy a whole new knockoff probe, right, quote unquote knockoff probe, take off the casings, put on a defective core OEM casings, and healthcare facilities, you'll never know because it looks exactly like it's supposed to look, but on the inside it's completely different. And if it's completely different on the inside, let's take a look at the language and let's interpret for ourselves what that really means. So Appendix B, non-OEM replacement transducers. These transducers are generally those that are manufactured by a party other than the original equipment manufacturer and are intended to replace a transducer originally provided by the system manufacturer. They can be either new transducers or original equipment transducers that have been modified or remanufactured. So when we're substituting another crystalline or a full cable assembly, not repairing it, and just simply replacing it with remanufactured parts, quote unquote, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of the remanufacturers, quote unquote, here aren't registered with the FDA that are putting the equipment in your transducers. That's why we're putting double quotes around this remanufactured thing, because we just can't find another way to say it, because knockoff components, fraudulent components, there's a whole host of things, but they're not following the directions here. So right there is very clearly saying has been modified or remanufactured. And the next paragraph here says, like new OEM transducers, non-OEM, reprocessed, and remanufactured transducers are considered new medical devices. As such, they are subject to the 510K pre-market notification regulations, 21 CFR 807.81. They need to have a cleared 510K prior to being marketed. I don't know how much clearer that can get.
Well, what it's signaling to me is, HTM professionals, engineers, every time they have a repair that goes out, and that may involve, say, a replacement cable assembly or crystals, there should be a new 510K that comes with that device as it comes back to the facility.
Absolutely correct. Absolutely.
And if it doesn't have that, what kind of process did it go through to get it revalidated?
Correct. What we found, because we've done this homework a long time ago, is that using OEM parts, while sometimes maybe really hard to find, is really the best way to preserve the safety and performance of these transducers. And it doesn't require a 510K because it's the right parts being used in these repairs. So what's really startling is that we see a lot of transducers that fit this very basic definition. We go look up their registration if they're registered with the FDA. They're not on there. We go look for 510Ks. They're not there. But for you as healthcare facilities, the market gets complicated because there might be a lot of layers involved, and offshore parts might be coming in and being put in these probes, and you don't even know about it. So, just to kind of take a moment here, that this is a definition. It's on the FDA's website right now, and then this is a really extensive page on what the requirements are for the 510K to clear. And it goes through acoustic power and all these different things in all these different modes that it must be proven, and then the 510K is cleared, and then the medical device can be sold to the open market.
Can't be in process.
The in process thing doesn't work here. So it's startling that this very basic language that's been on the FDA website for years is either ignored, or ignorance kind of comes into play that they don't even know it's there. So that's just really irresponsible. And we recommend that healthcare facilities that you go and you ask these kinds of questions and point out the exact definitions and on the FDA's website to make sure everybody's following the regulations that have been there for years.
And it's going to be one of those processes where a biomed, a clinical engineer, if they can master some of these things, it really gives them the power to take this into other modalities. And does it apply there? What are the rules? How can we apply them to our vendors?
Otherwise they're subject to being sold, right? Like It's okay because of this. It's okay because of that. It's okay because it's been done for this many years, or it doesn't work that way. It's got to go through this process as clear as day what the process should be. And if you're interested, we gave you the URL to go look it up. But we're certain that there's other regulations like this in other medical devices. We're just talking about ultrasound because that's what we know. But this applies to all medical devices, essentially. So how do you reduce your risk? So we're kind of honing in on that top left total cost of ownership piece that we started with, and that risk piece can get pretty significant pretty quick. And what we wanted to show you today is how does this stuff get in the parts?
Yep.
How does it flow? How does it get maybe to you and you don't even know about it? But then how do you protect yourself from that at the same time?
Well, it's amazing how quickly the process can mean risk on your end versus putting it with your suppliers and working with a supplier relationship. If you order something and it's just not validated or it's not quality, the risk is immediately just down to the hospital level.
And hospitals and healthcare facilities, just want to be clear, you take all the risk, right? It just traceability kind of comes into play. We'll talk about it as we start diving into the details here a little bit, but the probes are really hard to trace at that point because you don't know if it has the right stuff in it to begin with or not the right stuff, and how do you tease those out, and a recall becomes almost impossible at that point, right? Because you might have a, let's just call it a 15L8W probe. Half of your 15L8Ws might be perfect OEM probes, and the other half might have improperly remanufactured stuff on the inside. But when you do a recall, it's 15L8Ws, right? You do which one came from where. It just becomes a messy process.
Traceability. It's it plays both on the manufacturing side and the hospital side, and it can get muddy when it's in a clinical environment where probes are being swapped around. Never mind if it's not being traced on each individual study. We don't know where the bad image started coming from.
Yeah, and then the ISO 13485 facilities, traceability is actually baked into that QMS, and all ISO 13485s are required to trace everything that they're doing, so that organization can actually perform their own recall if necessary. Or if there's a larger recall, they know who to go notify for their customers on where those go. We need to recall those back and get those out of service as quickly as possible.
Exactly. And at any point, you can call us, ask for a report on certain numbers, things like that. It's quite amazing how our CRM system can actually apply to that as well. And we can tell every time a probe has been in here or where it's been before. And really help our customers investigate the life cycle of their equipment as well.
Absolutely. So again, just talking about probes, just because that's what we do, you can apply this philosophy to anything else. So we have a couple of different roadmaps for you healthcare facilities to take a look at today. And well, let's just talk about the left. Non-OEM parts installed by ultrasound suppliers. So we've already talked about the 510K stuff. We talked about the quality and all that. But how is this risk for a hospital? Well, and how does it get there? So many times the non-OEM ultrasound parts installed by an ultrasound supplier, they may sell it directly to you, your healthcare facility. And there's risk involved that you don't even know that you're assuming. The other way that it occurs is that those ultrasound organizations may sell it to another ultrasound, call it a middleman or a broker or another supplier of some sort that's in the business, with no ISO 13485 QMS that is designed to capture those low quality components, right? A lot of times it's not even tested here. It's just maybe blind shipped or whatever it may be.
Warehousing, these are organizations that might have to handle multiple modalities at the same time too. So how could they specialize in it?
And then it flows through that, and it gets to the healthcare facility. And again, this whole process kind of seeded by the improperly remanufactured parts inside these medical devices, the risk just flows. The bigger risk with it going and flowing through other organizations that may not be looking for these things, or maybe they just can't, they just don't know how. But they're insulating. It's another layer to get to the actual organization that would actually be doing these, these swaps of these, very low quality or manufactured parts at that point. So, the more insulating there is, traceability becomes a lot more difficult. But again, the root cause is, that top piece is just the low quality non-OEM parts being used that don't have a 510K. Is at the end of the day, it's healthcare facilities and patients that are the ones that are taking most risk. So how do you protect yourself from that? Well, our healthcare facility customers have agreed that the best way to date is finding an ultrasound supplier that's 1345, but the 1345, those are all customizable QMSs depending on the business.
Yep.
And they like to see that within the actual QMS itself, that's validated by an external party, that the QMS by procedure is designed to capture and identify these low quality manufactured parts. So, we're really lucky that we are able to do that with the technology that we have and the experience. We've seen a lot of transducers, but it allows us to prevent those high risk medical devices from getting to the hospital.
Not only that, if we apply this to another modality, you have so many other layers that can get involved, but a strong QMS system can be applied to almost anything.
Yep, and I just want to be clear that the 1345, a part of the requirement of 1345 is that you obey to all regulatory requirements.
Yep.
And so that's a good, an indicator that everything's good to go, it's been checked, and that it's been certified by an external body that, it has been looked at, it's good to go, everything's within tolerance of the regulations that we were kind of showing you on where to find those earlier in the FDA website.
Yep.
So a really great way to, healthcare facilities to mitigate your risk is to kind of identify those kinds of suppliers. And then at the end of the day, you're getting what you expect. So we're not saying, hey, yay, you're getting authentic medical devices. No, this is what you expect. So you are getting what you are ordering. You're getting what you're requesting. You're getting the repairs the way you're expecting your repairs. And so this is the only solution so far. And this is unfortunately taking place a lot more than it really should be in the marketplace. And at the end of it, the probes, they all touch the patient. And you want to make sure that that equipment's right. It's all the correct electronic internals, and the probe retains and preserves the safety and performance that it's supposed to.
Yeah, it's going to be quality for the patients, reduces the risk, and ultimately you're getting the performance that you need out of everything, so you can see the patients that you need to.
Yeah,
and you're not revisiting it constantly either.
Absolutely, and I think we actually spoke about this with Carolyn Coffin. She's a sonography professor where she comes in and she trains all of our technicians for image quality, because we need to identify what's good fuzzy and what's bad fuzzy, and how to look for flow, because that's really important. But she is just a real proponent of it impacts also workflow of the sonographer. It slows them down if it's not the right stuff on the inside.
Well, and they don't always know what's something that's happening on the transducer machine side of things versus just a particular patient risk or a particular patient quality issue, where they're not able to image something because it might be tricky, but actually it's the transducer holding them back.
Absolutely. So, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with Kyle and I. I'm Larry Wynn, CEO of Summit, and this is Kyle, our training manager, and our information is here. Again, we're on YouTube. Please check out our videos. This will be on there with the FDA links in the comments below. Follow us on LinkedIn. Tweet with us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. And we typically generate new content to help bring awareness and educate the healthcare facility industry out there, because our current healthcare facility customers are asking us to. They said that we have some really interesting perspectives, and they want us to share it with everybody else, and that's the reason why we're doing this. So thank you so much for taking the time, and we'd love to open the floor for some questions.
Thanks everyone. Let's give it a go.
All right.
that was great. We've had a few questions in. The first question is, if a supplier doesn't meet any of the things you discussed today, how do we go about assessing them? Hey, Carl, can you hear me?
Sorry about that. We were just on mute. 1 second here.
Did you want me to repeat the question?
No, we got it. You ready to go, Larry?
It's the big question that we are exploring with our customers, which is, how to assess suppliers that may not be 1345 certified to actually dive into something with an auditor. Looking at true repair capabilities and then assessing that against the regulations that we talked about today that could exist in multiple medical device repair and independent organizations. But so far the most effective way to actually assess a supplier is a good old site visit. We kind of mentioned this last time in the webinar too, that when customers bring a quality auditor to the actual organization itself, it's a really good, at least a first, temperature check of if the supplier is, following and obeying the regulations and doing the right quality things to ensure they're taking care of you, healthcare facilities. So, at the end of the day, it kind of just, diving more into the topics we spoke about today and those certifications and regulations that we're just educating the community on, a good old site visit to really see for yourself, and then obviously do your homework before you go there and pull up all the FDA regulations around the device that you are actually auditing against. It's just a really great way to begin. Then the assessment after that is completely up to you on what you're looking for. And this conversation is going to continue to evolve because the FDA is getting involved again. But as we said before, the site visit with just doing the due diligence and just validating all of the claims with external certifications and validations is going to be really critical for healthcare facilities moving forward.
Okay, the next question we've got, we know the FDA will be changing things in the future. Does this still apply after that regulation is in place?
Oh, absolutely. Regardless of the FDA imposing new regulations here in the near term or not, what we're trying to do is educate the community that there already has been regulations, and that those regulations, when you go look them up today, which is public domain on the FDA's website, that the new regulations are going to be there too. So the current regulations will change in favor of the new regulations, and that's why it's so critical that healthcare facilities investigate and research the suppliers to make sure that the suppliers are even aware and are capable of following the current regulations today, because the new regulations are going to be more sophisticated and more complex. So that really draws a big question that if medical device suppliers today can't follow that regulation, then how is it possible that they're going to be able to follow the regulation that's coming down the pike that's actually much more complicated and much more sophisticated, and at the same token exposes some really basic issues that these things should be researched and validated by every single medical device supplier in the United States, because this information is public domain, it's available, and it's just a corporate responsibility to make sure that everything's being done correctly into the federal regulations that we talked about today. So I think it's going to be even more critical to post regulation of the new FDA policies that we have to all go to and read and understand those new policies, and then turn around and healthcare facilities hold your suppliers accountable. to those new regulation standards, because obviously today there are regulations and they're still not being followed. So it's up to the healthcare facility at that point, the FDA, to be able to reinforce and enforce the new potential regulation coming down the pike.
Okay, another question is, for resellers and brokers, how would they know if the medical devices meet all of these regulations?
That is a terrific question, because in our independent healthcare medical device market, there are a lot of brokers and resellers of medical devices. And this is, again, how do you know if they know that the products they're getting are following, current FDA regulations and quality management standards? That's a question you have to ask them. And you are going to have to ask them to validate their supplier approval processes and, ensure that they're just not shopping for the best price all the time that could contain, quote unquote, very low quality remanufactured parts on the inside of these devices. Many times they're not even asking the question, or they don't even know the details on the engineering and the technical challenges of all these medical devices. So, that's really where you healthcare facilities have to investigate and research them to make sure that, number one, they're aware of their FDA regulations. So everything that, resellers and brokers are reselling and brokering, they should know exactly where the regulations for every single medical device, where it lies on the FDA's website. And at that point, they should be interpreting that correctly, and then enforcing those regulations that are currently in place today. I got to stress that one. There is regulation today to their suppliers, and ensuring that they're protecting you as well, that the suppliers that they're using are following all of these quality and federal regulations to protect patient safety. So again, this is using external validation and certifications are really great things to look at. But this kind of adds that layer to the supply chain that makes it a bit difficult, because what we're hearing from our customers is that these extra resellers and brokers, it acts like an insulator between the suppliers who are using really low quality parts to the healthcare facilities that end up using the equipment. And so, it's just kind of an accepted ignorance, kind of going through the layers, and the amplitude of the ignorance kind of increases the more layers the equipment goes through, and with a almost a perceived value of risk mitigation, because they're simply just further down the supply chain than from the original supplier that's putting bad stuff in the equipment. And that's just not the case. It's not the case at all in the healthcare facilities. Like you really need to protect yourselves from that, because a simple "I don't know" is a really bad answer in this industry, because the "I don't know" who ultimately assumes all the risk are healthcare facilities and the patients. So I think that there really needs to be a hyper focus on these kinds of topics, because that healthcare facility, that's how you're going to lower your total cost of ownership, because you're ensuring you're getting quality product that's performing the way it's supposed to perform, and it's protecting patients the way it's supposed to protect them. And until these investigations take place, because we're seeing that they're not taking place currently as much as it should be, healthcare facilities, I think you're going to have to take a lead on this one to ensure that you are able to protect your patients, give them the quality care that you're committing to them. But at the same time, when you are finding these quality products and quality suppliers that are doing a really great job following all the regulations and doing all the correct quality management system things, it actually lowers your total cost of ownership, because your equipment downtime decreases, your outsourced service calls decreases because your frequency of failure decreases. So at the end of the day, it's only a winning situation for healthcare facilities to investigate these kinds of things.
Okay, and here is the last question we've had in today. Where can I go to find more information to learn about what is going on and how to protect ourselves?
Well, right now, the FDA has all this information up on their website. We're going to include the links when the video goes out via email and on our YouTube channel later. We try to comment it on as much as possible. So, following myself and Larry on LinkedIn, we're posting up the new news about it as much as we can. But then also, Amy has always been a great resource, and they post this information and keep us up to date. But really, it's going to be going out and grabbing those chunks of information that you need on your own. ISO 13485 standards are posted on their website. FDA guidelines are right there. And once you kind of grasp this knowledge and hold on to it, you can then start holding that expectation to your vendors, whether it be ultrasound or anything else.
Okay. Well, thank you, Larry and Carl. That was a great webinar, and thank you again to today's sponsors, Summit Imaging. One lucky attendee will win an Amazon gift card for completing the post-webinar survey, which will appear on your screen shortly. You must complete the survey to obtain your certificate of attendance. If you do not see this survey, please email us at webinar@mdpublishing.com. For more information about our upcoming webinars, please visit our website, One TechNation, that's the number 1, technation.com/webinars. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week for our last webinar of the year. Have a great day.